First is from Psalm 65. Praise is due to you, O God in Zion, and to you shall vows be performed. You visit the earth and water it. You greatly enrich it. The river of God is full of water. You provide the people with grain, for so you have prepared it. You water its furrows abundantly, settling its ridges, softening it with showers, and blessing its growth. You crown the year with your bounty. Your wagon tracks overflow with richness. The pastures of the wilderness overflow. The hills gird themselves with joy. The meadows clothe themselves with flocks. The valleys deck themselves with grain. They shout and sing together for joy.
And the second reading is from Matthew 13, verses 1 through 9. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell on the path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. Let any one with ears listen. Thus ends the reading of God's holy word.
Thanks be to God.
I just have to say a couple of words before I start the sermon. It's been a revelation to become the historian of the church. There are boxes everywhere, and every one of them holds some kind of wonderful treasure that both Beth and I get so excited over we can hardly contain ourselves. Such was what we're going to talk about today. The Lord's Acre. It seems it has always been a mission of this church and this community at large to ensure that feeding the hungry in both body and spirit is not a privilege, but rather a basic human right. We continue in this tradition every week of the year through our spiritual Sunday gathering, our social hour, our community dinners, and our food pantry. Therefore, it should not come as a surprise that this dedication to feeding the hungry with dignity and respect is an ingrained mission of our congregation. Our very first settlers were farmers relocating from the depleted soils of Massachusetts. They harvested the trees, built churches, homes, and barns, and started raising sheep, horses, cows, and crops. One of the first businesses in Bristol Center was a creamery located in the gully across from the Acorn Inn. The entire valley next to Mud Creek was covered with grazing sheep, and the nickname of Muttonville was given to a cluster of houses and barns at the bottom of Vincent Hill Road to denote the use of that land. Our ancestors were hard-working farmers, but they were famously devout. Bristol once had 7 active churches during the mid-1800s. We will talk about Reverend Zadok Hahn and the early churches during our first Lenten supper on March 12th. In 1948, World War II was over, peace reigned, and the profits or crops from the local fields were finally available to feed Bristol parishioners and increase the church treasury instead of benefiting the U.S. soldiers. Church pledges that year saw a 92% increase, since many people had money to spend after the conservative saving during the war years. The Women's Society of our church contributed $450 toward the financial support of the church through tea parties and dinners and plays and fashion shows. Church was the center of activity for all families, and the town of Bristol supported 4 different congregations that year. Everyone in the family participated in the activities of the church, and almost every family went to one of the churches. A great majority of the families lived on farms, or at least had large victory gardens and fruit trees or berries. Today, we want to share with you a very unique program which the Universalist Church, our denomination then, undertook in the 1940s called the Lord's Acre. Originally, individual farming families each set aside 1 acre of land with all the profit made on the harvest from those plots donated to the church. Gradually, this developed into a community project. In 1949, the church improvement the congregation most desired was an enhancement of the music, which we today treasure. They wanted the gift of music every Sunday to be played on a new electric organ that would replace the 60-year-old pump organ. They sold the old pump organ to Carl Gerhardt of South Bloomfield for $60. But the new electric organ cost $1,200. In order to pay for the new organ, they had to think of fundraising ideas to supplement pledges of $952, which were received from everyone in the congregation according to their ability. The trustees, many of whom were farmers, asked local farming friends to lease to the church acreage for the Lord's use. The first parcel, consisting of 12 acres, was pledged by President of the Board of Trustees, Earl Pessel, and sown with wheat. The second parcel of 8 acres, which was atop the hill near Bristol Center, was owned and pledged by Bessie Wheeler Cooper. This was planted with beans. These parcels had to be sowed, fitted, and sown with seeds, with all the labor, gasoline, equipment use, and seed donated by generous farm families. The only financial outlay necessary for the project was $84 paid for fertilizer. 20 farmers and boys in all worked the fields.
Imagine, if you can, fields with 6 or 7 tractors plowing and fitting the fields to plant them. Then the neighborhood boys showed up, 10 or 12 of them, and they did the back-breaking job of picking up stones to save their fathers' backs. The work was done in record time, and the fields were ready for the sun and the rain. In late summer, the tractors pulling combines went through the fields in record time, and there were often up to 9 tractors in action on the same field. The yield was 480 bushels of wheat, of which 100 bushels was reserved for the next year's seed and given to pay rent to Mr. Pessel for the use of the land. The nominal fee was equivalent of 3 bushels of wheat per acre, or about $70. The net yield was worth $740 for the church treasury, and an addition of over $60 from the beans harvested in late fall added $100 to the organ fund. There was no mention of Mrs. Wheeler being compensated for the use of her fields. Perhaps she used this donation as her pledge to the church. At any rate, these two generous landowners made a significant contribution to the church coffers, and the music from that organ delighted the congregation for many years. No doubt, while the men were harvesting the Lord's acre, the Women's Society of the church were preparing a celebratory dinner for the hungry men and boys, and served in the Bristol Grange dining room across the street, west of the cemetery, because the church did not have a meeting room large enough to seat such a large group. The fellowship hall was not added to our church until much later. And you'll hear about that in one of our Lenten suppers too. A long article on the Lord's Acre Project was written by Lena Steele of Bloomfield, resident and philanthropist, and she submitted it to the Democrat Chronicle. Another article appeared in the October 1950 Christian Leader magazine, a Universalist Church of America publication, which included a photograph of Gordon T. Allen, clerk of Bristol Church, driving a tractor, and chairman of the Board of Trustees Earl A. Pessel and his young son Gary Pessel riding on the combine while they tied off bags of wheat. And we have this photograph, and we'll show you after the service. Wilfred Ward made the Route 20A road sign in front of the field that announced Lord's Acre Project, Bristol Universalist Church. The earth is the Lord's. Sunday service, 10:30 a.m. The mission was so successful that the plan for the 1951 Lord's Acre Project was to plant peas instead of beans, which when harvested would have been driven to the canning factory in Bloomfield, located behind the current Surefine. There is no record of how long the Lord's Acre Project continued, but we are sure we will find out that information as we continue to sort through our historical records and memorabilia. Our church's idea has been used by another local organization and congregation in the last few years, and I thought you might be interested to hear about this from Victor. The St. John's Lutheran Church planted 5 acres of potatoes on a donated field on Woolston Road. And after church on Harvest Day, all of the congregation members that could went to dig up the potatoes, place them in drywall buckets, and we filled 2 huge pickup trucks full with 2,500 pounds of freshly dug potatoes. These were cleaned and then donated to the Victor Farmington Food Cupboard, which is one of the 10 largest food cupboards in Western New York, and it serves all of Ontario County, over 600 families every month. Wouldn't it be a grand adventure for us to recreate this mission for the benefit of hungry families right here in Bristol? Right now, the national statistics are 1 in every 13 people in the United States do not know where their next meal is coming from. And those numbers are increasing rapidly as we go through different changes. We ask you to consider resurrecting the Lord's Acre concept this year in a smaller form of a container, a window box, or a garden plot. We could do it at the church, or it could be at your own home as an individual project. Easy to grow, low maintenance crops like carrots, potatoes, and winter squash are always in demand at the food cupboards. Or you could create a container garden to donate. Salsa garden in a drywall bucket. Could include a cherry tomato plant, a couple of onions, and a pepper. We could give the fresh produce away at the garden shed across from the Bristol Town Hall and benefit the town park at the same time. Or you could donate it to any number of local free lunch programs or food cupboards. We would be encouraging healthy choices and sharing organic, fresh food with our neighbors. Neighbors feeding neighbors is exactly what the Lord's Acre achieved. It does not seem a coincidence that we found and were able to share this history during the Lenten season of renewal. May the message and the memory of the community we just shared sustain you and promise future blessings upon many. Amen.
Thanks everyone for listening.